At Your Instep is brought to you by Comic Town and BCW Supplies. Hello, and welcome to At Your Instep. My name is Morgan. I'm here with Mike.
Hello.
And we have another fun-filled episode for you folks this week. Before we get started, I definitely want to make sure that we talk about our giveaways that are currently going on. So we have two Nexus of Fates that we are giving away. One is exclusively through our Patreon. So if you're not aware of that, we do have a Patreon. It's patreon.com/atyourendstep. And you can sign up for any tier of our Patreon and be automatically entered into winning a single copy of Nexus of Fate. We also have another giveaway going on through our Twitter. It's through like a Google Forms sort of document that you can fill out. So it does require a Google account. But other than that, you can just sign up and be entered into win another copy of Nexus of Fates. And both those contests will be running through August. So you have until the end of August to be qualified for those. And then we will do the actual announcement of the winners, our first episode in September. So be sure to check this out. And, of course, again, check out our Patreon, of course, so that you can join up before the contest ends. If that's something you want to do, we would appreciate it. So we, of course, have a few community topics to discuss. And then we had a couple of GPs happen over the weekend that were both standard. So lots of standard talk this week.
Welcome to Standard Talk.
Welcome to Standard Talk. And then we'll close up with our normal, what's happening in the coming weekend and where you can find the show. If you have, you already found the show. Where you can leave reviews for the show, and then how you can contact.
The show has gone astray. And,
where you can find it when it gets lost.
Where in the world is At Your Instep?
And then, of course, if you want to reach out to us, how you can do that as well. So, let's talk community. So first and foremost, today we got an announcement for the Spellslinger Starter Kit. This is going to be a new sealed product that is going to function as a way to teach new players how to play the game. And what it's going to have is two sealed decks. Is that correct?
Yeah, two sealed decks that come pre-shuffled, if that makes sense. They are sorted in a very specific fashion. They have a little card on them that tells you, hey, don't shuffle this before you play.
Which is super weird, and might get a lot of people when they first get it. But so they're obviously they are laid out in such a way that you could likely follow a guide of some persuasion and can easily teach yourself and a friend how to play the game. And I think like that is really interesting. It's weird because you don't shuffle it, and like shuffling is just to me just part of the game, but yeah, I think it's they've been trying to do a lot of different things in like how do you teach people the game, how you teach people Magic, and I think that it's a noble effort and that they should try a whole bunch of different a whole bunch of different ways to try to do that. And well, this is not a product for us, obviously, but I would like to see how this fares better than like the introductory decks they have and stuff like that.
Well, these definitely have a little bit more value than the introductory decks if you were going to buy something. The introductory decks are just meant to sort of give away and teach, but I will say they did a good job, I think, with this as far as like the packaging looks really nice. You have two different of the D20, which I think are solid color choices, and have the magic symbol on them as their 20. And then they have obviously foil cards at the beginning of this. And there's a Sarah's Guardian, which is a big sort of flyer. And then there's a Galta Primal Hunger. And literally all you can see from the casing is 12/12 Elder Dinosaur. And I think like if you're trying to grab people's eyes, like, well, you play Magic. Big dinosaurs.
Yeah, big dinosaurs. Yeah, like
also foil Galtas are like kind of like a nice little pickup. So
yeah, and that if this was like a different set that had a different, you would expect to see maybe like a dragon in that spot or something like that, something big and flashy, and that gets people's attention. So I agree. I think the packaging looks nice. I think the cards that you get with it are pretty worthwhile. And we do have deck lists for both the decks that you have in there, so you can definitely check them out. If you're just the kind of person that just picks up sealed product for collector reasons or what have you. So,
I will say this: I could be wrong with them being foil. Now that I read it back, they may not be foil.
okay,
So, which I think is actually probably fine because
that's fine. Yeah,
they don't need to, curl. So the
Yeah.
one thing I will say about these lists, they're both two color. The white one is it's white red, and the other one's green black. And compared to the starter decks, they pick up in difficulty very quickly. They have a lot of different types of effects and cards. And I think overall, like if you're the kind of person who bought this to learn the game, you get a lot more replay value out of this than those little boxes you get at the store.
yeah. I think it's important too that they are guild aligned colors as well.
That is important, and they're going to have, as mentioned, some of the Guilds of Ravnica cards in them. They in the deck list they are listed as 3 or 4 GRN. So like
Oh, that's
we don't
cool.
we don't get to know what those cards are, but they will have some of those cards in them, which I assume are probably, if I had to guess, gold cards. It would be my guess for these two guilds.
That would make sense. Yeah. So cool.
But I think it's a again, not a product for us, but I think it's a good product, and it's certainly the kind of product I could see buying because there's been plenty of times like my wife has like friends who like, oh, they heard about Magic, and my poor wife cannot talk to anybody about anything without, if it has Magic at all in it, it's like, oh, that's literally my husband's life. So but I've definitely had to teach people, and I could definitely see just being like, oh, you want to learn the game? Well, let's just go like. We'll go over to Comic Town, and I'll buy one of these, and I'll show you how to do it. Because it's just very clean and easy, and then you just have the cards afterwards. And $15 is, I think, the perfect sort of price point for that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I like it. I like it.
it's a good product.
Moving on from that, we are going to revisit Nexus of Fate here for a little bit.
Which is flavorful.
That's true.
We put it at the bottom of our deck, or shuffled it into our deck,
Yep.
and drew it this podcast.
Much like Sarkin, we're walking back into the mold bones, going back in time to a week earlier when we talked about Nexus of Fate.
So you say we're going to roll back the clock to the dawn of time so we can
Yeah.
sing this song with me?
Yeah.
If you know what movie I'm quoting a song from, you're cool. If not, figure it out.
Google it.
Challenged.
So Mark Rosewater had a clarifying statement that he made on his blog in regards to the rarity of Nexus of Fate, in which he stated that there are more Nexus of Fates printed than there are any other single mythic in M19, which is an interestingly worded statement, because printed and circulated are different. As far as that is concerned. So yes, you can print more of something, but if you can't circulate it as well as you can circulate other mythics in M19, I don't think it matters that much. If I know that there's like gold somewhere, but I can't get to it, well then I don't know how much
God
that benefits
printed this
me.
much gold.
Yeah, exactly. But you gotta,
But them 49ers, man, they didn't circulate all of it.
They did not. And I know that, Mike, you said that this, you felt like the way that this was like put out and presented and worded was disingenuous.
Yeah, so I think there's been some definitely some softer takes this week after this. I think Morgan titled last week's episode "So Angry," which might be a Scott Pilgrim dig. I'm not totally sure, but and I think we were pretty frustrated. And knowing that there are a lot more of these does help to an extent. Obviously, what Morgan just suggested is a little frustrating, and I'll come back to that point. I want to focus on the last sentence, though, which was, we don't normally talk about how many we print of a card, but Blake publicly clarified this because there's a misconception that Nexus of Fate is far rarer than it actually is. When he says Blake there, it's Blake Rasmussen. They did this on their MTG stream. So there's only a misconception and how rare it is because you created one. And now granted, don't get me wrong, like speculators and I know that Chase Andres in his article this week apologized, suggesting that he and people like Saffron Olive did drive the price of this because they're finance guys. That's certainly a thing. But when you tell everyone the only way to get this promo is this, and we're not printing it any other way, and you don't say anything else, you create the misconception.
Yeah.
So pretending like the public created the misconception when you created an exclusive buy a box promo that is legal and standard, that's horse poop.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I appreciate that. I agree. Like you are trying to, it's very clear that you are trying to move boxes by selling this exclusive card. And by titling it the way that you have, by marketing it the way that you have led people to believe that this card is of a certain rarity. That now you're kind of due to the fact that you've created this mess, have to actually discuss things you don't normally talk about. I don't know why you don't talk about these things, but I think it's something to do with like the potential like legality of like
that's
selling what will equate to lottery tickets to children.
Yeah.
Which I can understand that being a sticky situation for a company, I suppose. But it's just like them trying to clarify a mess that they've made by their own hands and still coming off of it not looking fantastic in my opinion.
Yeah, like this is like a common like shady practice when you think of like high end fashion stores, right? Is that like if you don't know anything about this, they tend to have small stores with not a lot of like space for things, and they'll put out one or two of items of something so that everything always looks scarce. You're gonna get the last one. Oh my gosh, you got such a good deal. You got the last one, and that's like when you buy that, and they're like, oh, you got the last one, and then you leave, and they take another one out of the back and put it out, and you walk back in and go, wait, I thought I got the last one. Like, ooh, we're sorry for the misconception. No, it's a shady business tactic. So
Yeah.
I think it's just weird. And I think going back to what you said, Jim Davis had a really good anecdote this week. It's Star City, but it is on the select side. So there you go.
You can read it for free.
He mentioned how he and his wife were driving around to different like local game stores in their area and like wanted to see if they could buy Nexus of Fate and I think like the time frame on it technically, from what I was told, is like the end of this month they can sell extra copies. And the stores they went to had copies, but of course could not sell them because they're afraid to break their WPN agreement, which makes total sense.
Yeah.
But if they still have copies, and that's what European players have been saying, like, oh yeah, there's a bunch here, a bunch of stores still have copies. Well, I don't know, like this is like the tail wagging the dog kind of situation, right? Like, so this was super successful for stores, but all these stores still have tons of copies that they can't sell. Well, they didn't sell the boxes then,
right.
So you've failed. Like, and again, their numbers, whatever. That may not be every game store that's anecdotal. I get that, but you had people driving to a local game store to try and give them money for a card that exists, that is legal and standard for a deck they want, and they can't do that. So when you tell them this is to help local game stores, and then here's a person who's like, I'd like to hand you this $40 for the thing you have, and they go, well, you could hand us $100 for it, and they're like, well, no, but you own it, and I want to give my money to you before I go and give it to Cool Stuff Inc.
Yeah.
And like, what? Like, so that is frustrating. I compared it to if you ever seen the 40-Year-Old Virgin, like the whole scene where it's like I was going to say Seth Rogen, but that's not who is in that scene. It's Jonah Hill.
It's Jonah Hill.
He's like, I'd like to buy these boots, please. Oh, this is an eBay store. This is, you know, I think it's on eBay, but I want to hand you my money, like, now. It's like, oh, I can't do that. Like, that is a weird practice. I think there's still a number of ways this could be fixed better. Don't let it be in standard. Don't make it a standard card. It is confusing for newer players who cannot, like, oh, cool, I'd like to try this deck. Can I buy these cards? You can't. Not from us. Like, it's such a weird practice to be like, only if you bought X many of these boxes. Otherwise, you no longer can help the local game store. And two, don't make them foil anymore. If you want to make exclusive cards, we had to see more mountains on GP stream this weekend. Please stop with this. So, suggesting that, like, because there's a bunch of people who like tweeted again various things like haha, we were right, and it's like, no, there's this is a nuanced, frustrating problem.
Yeah.
And everybody wants desperately to just be like, you're all just whiners, you're all complainers. Corbin Hosler just said like, oh well, Magic players just complain. It's like, but there's still like legitimate weird things about this whole practice. And I get it. Honestly, the bulk of the people that I've seen super positive about it are riding the WotC gravy train in some fashion. And maybe that sounds wrong. I don't know to tell you. Like, if your paycheck comes from WotC, or your store that isn't, you know, that's a massive online retailer derives a lot of its money from Magic sales, I get it. You don't want to be negative about WotC, but like, it just looks weird. Where you're just like, see, you're all just complaining. We were right. And it's like, no, it's still weird. This is a weird business practice.
Yeah, I it's not something that I'm ever going to agree with, and I unfortunately don't see this as a...
And their company hasn't agreed with in the past. That's the best thing. It's all the documented evidence of them saying it's a bad practice.
To be fair, all of that's just Mark Rosewater, and like, I don't know, that man, like, he...
If Mark Rosewater's
makes
blog,
the cards.
If Mark Rosewater's blog did not set policy standard for WotC, then he wouldn't have it. Because consistently he's been allowed to answer platform questions on it. He may not speak like officially for Wizards, but they certainly like to let it be the voice of God often. They really do.
I get that, but they always have deniability with that. They're like, well, that's
Of
what
course they do.
that's what
Because
Mark
it's
feels.
weird.
That's how Mark feels. It's
Yeah,
not how.
except for we don't want to make a comment on it.
Yeah, because like, well, of course they don't. Because they. Here's the thing.
Only look at the giant holographic head when we want you to.
But they don't have to. Like,
I know they
you
don't.
just you.
I know.
Because
I
like,
know.
here's the thing. Like, people are still going to continue to play Magic. It's the weirdest thing. Like, is this?
We're still podcasting about it. It's not like
Exactly.
we're like, I don't like this. Pack it up. Show's over.
You know, this is the straw that broke the camel's back. This is something that we can gripe about, but we're still going to continue to feed the cash machine that is WotC. So it's like they don't have to say anything. They don't have to acknowledge that this is a problem because like they don't care.
I think it's just frustrating because like I do want to support WotC and I want to support my local game store, and I feel like I tried so hard. I got on this cast and talked about how like I bought Dominaria boxes because I love Dominaria and wanted to show WotC that, and all I've done is let WotC go, see, these idiots bought it because of the promo, and I feel like now I shouldn't buy boxes because that's how I should show them that that's a bad like policy. So it's awkward. Like we're literally giving, like it seems like the worst cross promotion for ourselves of all time. Hey, we're literally giving away these Nexus of Fates, but it's like we're giving them away because like someone else will use them because I don't want it. Like,
Yeah.
It's just weird. But whatever. At least there's more of them. Oh, the other thing that's really frustratingly disingenuous about that statement is that currently there are more Nexus of Fate than any single Magic 2019 Mythic. But of course, for the next 2 months, they're going to keep printing that set. So as GPs happen and drafts and everything else, that will catch up.
Yeah, of course.
But like suggesting like this is the answer to it, like that's it. It's like, are you making more? Oh, nope, answer's done. Close laptop. Like,
yeah, like I said, they can.
Hey, what are you, some kind of math nerd? Shut up, kid.
They're allowed to be as cryptic and as secretive as they've always been with stuff that is a sensitive subject to the community. WotC has a really awful transparency problem, and they've consistently had this problem. And you know what? It doesn't matter because it doesn't affect their bottom line. Magic is still growing. It doesn't matter how transparent they are. So what makes you, as a player, what makes you think at all that they are going to change this? They aren't, unless they suddenly see the bottom fall out. Unless they suddenly see a decline. And
unless the bottom drops out.
Yeah, yeah, and it's just not. So we could sit here and like complain about WotC and their general like shady practices, but if you want that to change, then we have to stop playing Magic. Like the period, we have to stop buying cards, which means like you have to stop supporting your local game store, at least Magic wise. Maybe you pick up another game, but I don't know. It's tough.
Yeah,
it's a tough situation,
it's
and I'm still going to rally against it because I don't think it's fair that this is like a way to. I don't think it's like the true reason that is causing people to buy boxes of Magic. And I think like if you're going to do a promo that's associated with this, there are ways that you haven't done it before, that you can do it and it still be successful.
Yeah, I if you want to keep doing it this way, fine. Just stop making it standard legal. Stop making it foil. I'll stop complaining then, at least.
Just make it a good card. Just always make it a good card. You know what cards are going to be good.
Well, when he says that, he means in print. He means it's printed in the set. Yeah, I agree. I still agree with you. I think that they had an alternate art Nicol Bolas, for example, just like a really special art of that.
The best card in the set.
Because then it's just like the San Diego Comic-Con Planeswalkers.
Yes.
That's like saying that the San Diego Comic-Con Planeswalkers have to be unique cards to sell. No, they get to sell them at a premium because they have a great artist do a cool thing with them. So if that's unique enough to sell, literally to sell Jace Cunning Castaway for $100, you know what I mean? Or sell you a bunch of Planeswalkers that are rotating out of standard, and people bought all of them. They went on sale today and sold out immediately, right?
Yep.
If that's enough to do that, then come on now.
Come on. It's not hard. Again, you have a group of people within your building that are designed to test standard, and apparently don't know how to test promo cards, but are designed to test standard. And they know what's going to be good. I don't know how everything aligns, but I mean, it has to be before it goes to printing, right? Like, do they find out if things are broken after the cards have already been printed? I don't think so.
They do the Johnny Carson. They hold the card up to their head.
I don't know, man. I don't know. Again, there's no transparency. We don't know when all these things happen, but I assume that they know what cards are going to be good and what cards are going to be bad by the time everything needs to be set in stone. for like promos. So figure it out. It's not hard, but you sure seem to make it hard for some reason, Watsy, and I don't get it. I just don't get it.
So let's stop talking about X of 8 though, because I feel like if you're a person who disagrees with us, you just hated every minute of the last 2 weeks, and I'm very sorry for that.
But it's something that we clearly feel passionate about.
Hopefully, we were compelling, and you didn't just like stick your fingers in your ear while we did that, or delete us. Don't delete us.
Just fast forward 45 seconds a bunch of times.
Keep us here forever. No, don't delete. I give myself some existential fear. Don't do that. Don't make me fear mortality. Podcast mortality.
Death comes for us all, man.
Wow. Well, now you have to put a warning at the front of this episode.
Anyway, moving on. We do have a bit of exciting news coming to Magic Online. We have the Pro Tour Cube coming. And if you don't know about this cube, this is actually Eric Klug's cube, which you may know that name. He's a very prolific, probably the most prolific altarist on the scene.
And probably, I'm gonna be honest, sorry, other altarists, probably the most talented.
Yeah,
he does some incredible work.
I mean, he is a true artist when it comes to those sort of stuff.
I don't only say that because he's painted my face before, but the man has painted my face before. So the man who painted my face onto a card got to make a cube that's going on Magic Online. So ipso facto, I'm internet famous.
But so this is what this is he's had this cube for quite some time, and this was actually a runner-up or a near win in the You Pick the Cube contest a while back, where we got the color shifted cube. I think that was the one that actually won. And this is a cube of all of the 22 years of Pro Tour history, basically. So all the winning deck list, all the cards from the winning deck list, I believe, get put into this cube, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I believe so. I'm trying to look
there may be some pruning as far as that's concerned, but I'm not sure what the actual end.
Yeah, so it was like 906 cards. It said for Magic Online they cut it down to 540. So that means that there's some cards, especially sideboard cards, weird cards that we're probably not going to make it in. So he mentioned things like Cranial Extraction or Storm Shaman, the 0/4 that has fire breathing.
Yeah.
So some stuff that's just like weird or low powered, but it's really cool because like every Pro Tour gets to add to this, and now it's something I've wanted to play, and now I get to.
Yeah, albeit a weirder, smaller version of it, but maybe a more trim version of it.
Yeah,
more fit version.
That's more fit. There's definitely a lot of combos in it too, which is pretty cool because, fun fact, a lot of combo decks have won Pro Tours.
Yeah, weird how that happens.
So some of the ones it mentions here are Illusions of Grandeur and Donate, which you've never got to do that to somebody. It is wonderful. Illusions of Grandeur is an enchantment where you gain 20 life when it comes into play, and if it leaves play, you lose 20 life, and it has cumulative upkeep, which is an ability that... Man, I walked myself into a trap on this one. Cumulative upkeep is you have to pay every turn, every upkeep, and it keeps adding. So 2, then 4. And so you donate it to a player who eventually will not be able to pay for it, and they'll lose 20 life. It is adorable. There's Punishing Fire, Grove of the Burn Willows. There's Recurring Nightmare and Survival of the Fittest. Oath of Druids, Cognivore. Goblin Welder, Mindslaver, a personal favorite. There's Cadaverous Bloom, which was like an old Mirage card that off the top of my head I cannot tell you how it works, and Kiki Jiki, Splinter Twin, etc. So that's pretty sweet.
Yeah, a lot of cool things that you could definitely do in this cube, and it will be premiering August 15th. So that's this coming Wednesday for us.
Yeah,
that's pretty exciting. All right, that's all of our community topics. Before we jump into competitive, I do want to give a quick shout out to Comic Town. They have a Modern IQ with a 1K cash prize payout that's going to be happening Saturday, August 18th. So definitely check that out. You can find out more about this event by visiting their Facebook page. It's just do a search for Comic Town Gaming Center on Facebook. And if you're local, we hope to see you there. All right, competitive. So we had two standard GPs. We had GP Brussels and GP Orlando. We're going to talk about Brussels first, and it was won by Jeremy Dezani. And he was playing, was it Esper or Blue White?
He was on Esper Control.
Okay, so he was playing Esper, And we see like in the actual top 8 here that Control definitely sort of showed up a bit in this. So we had Jeremy Nazani in first, but we also had Arnie Hushenbeth in sixth, and then Guillaume Wafatapa, the man, the myth, the legend, showing up in seventh, all playing Esper Control. We also had mostly red aggro, so this is a red-black aggro list that is splashing black probably for the activation of
Scrounger, and it has cut the ribbons.
Yeah. And it was piloted by Giordano Fagiolo. And then a couple of Sultai lists. So this is something we haven't seen in a little bit of a while. It was a Sultai mid-range list and a Sultai gift deck.
The Sultai mid-range is just like a definite throwback, but it has a really cool card in it. He's playing 4 Wild Growth Walker, which is the green in a generic for a 1/3, and it says whenever you explore, you get to +1/+1 counter and you gain 3 life. And he has 4 Merfolk Branch Walkers and 4 Jadelight Rangers, plus the Scarab God. That card's really tough for the red decks to beat.
Yeah, it is. It's a bit of a beating, especially when you're going to Scarab God it back and make it a 4/4 as its base, and then just get bigger from there.
Well, your curve literally go that into Jadelight Ranger, you gain 6 life.
Yeah,
and you have a 3/5 and a possible 4/3. So yeah, I think that's pretty. That's sweet, and I think those sort of throwback decks where this kind of looks like, honestly, this kind of looks like energyless energy, like the way these decks are put together. Yeah. We haven't seen, I think, this kind of mid range deck often enough, and I think this is a pretty good list. So.
And we also had Sultai Gift, which is a gift, Gay of the Afterlife, Godfarer's gift deck, and. We're seeing, this look like a blue-black gift deck that is not splashing, but like playing things like Jadelight Ranger and Thrashing Bronzodon, as well as Merfolk Branchwalker, and you got some nice sideboard cards for green as well with Vivian Reed and Manglehorn in the side here.
I'm sad that this list isn't running the Multani tech that we saw out of the a couple Pro Tours ago, right?
Yeah.
But I do like Multani in these lists. But I love the ideas of these lists and using Godfarer's gifts in a little bit of a different way.
Yeah, and we do see Virtus Gearhulk as a way for them to just do dirty things.
Yeah, very very gross things. Very very gross.
An important note about this list: I don't see any, at least I don't see any Scarab God, right?
No, it says Sultai, but it's just got one, it has Hostage Taker, and that's it. Yeah, that's kind of interesting to me.
Yeah, that's so it's mainly blue-green. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
The other deck that we have top 8 here is Turbo Fog. And this deck, we see it here in 4th place, piloted by Thomas Meechan, and then we also have it in 9th place and in 10th place, and another list in 17th place. So, we'll look at both GPs. Both of them both had 4 in the top 32. So, definitely a deck that is not taking over the format, not being the a unstoppable powerhouse, but definitely showing up.
I share of the metagame, not just a blip.
Yeah,
definitely we can point out the controls resurgence this week, obviously because that's what won the Pro Tour for first and foremost was Blue Eye Control, but also because Control had a pretty good matchup against these Turbo Fog decks. So we know that they were pretty well represented. Frank Carson wrote about it. Didn't get an actual metagame breakdown, but Frank Carson did write about it being pretty well represented, at least in Brussels. So I expect to see more of this deck next week, and it'll be interesting to see how that meshes out with the control decks, because if the control decks are going to be countered by more low to the ground red decks, then you would also assume Nexus is good there too, and it just ends up being part of the metagame. So, I'm not opposed to the deck existing. We're frustrated with the promos distribution, but I think the deck is cool. I just wish that we got to see the card in play and not mountains.
Yeah. Nah, so, that would have been nice.
Foil out your Bant Nexus decks is what I'm telling you. Don't do that. Unless you want to. The fairies are nice.
But I really, I definitely, think that there's a lot of people that like to play this style of deck, and that we haven't had this deck, this type of deck, really be viable in Standard in a while. So I'm glad it exists for sure, but it's definitely awkward that it really does have this Nexus of Fate card in it, and it feels like we should be celebrating this more, but it almost feels that we're kind of talking about it through gritted teeth when we
I
bring it up.
100% agree with you on that. Like, it's either gritted teeth or like derisive laughter, like haha, right? But I agree. We probably should be celebrating the deck itself because we are in the death knells of this
Yeah.
standard format. Like I know we just got the the core set, but in all honesty, like this new standard format doesn't last very long, and it already starts to feel kind of stale. So for a literal brand new deck to appear in these later stages of the format and take hold, we thought Zombies was going to be a player. It's gone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And in all honesty, like, we're worried about Nexus of Fate, but we should still, like, as far as the health of Standard, Red Black, mid range / chain whirler is what they're calling it for this GP. Still has a metagame presence that's probably absurd if we had to deal with this metagame for a longer period of time. Like, the Pro Tour, it was 40% of the metagame. Here we have 9 copies in the top 32. You know what I mean?
Yeah, according to MTG Goldfish, which take that with a grain of salt, it's nearly 29%
Of online meta. Yeah, like, that's...
Yeah, well, that's combined.
And that's all different. Yeah, I get what you're saying, but like, I think that like that deck is still troubling a little bit as far as like its representation, and probably what Chain Whirler is still doing to the format. Like, that conversation hasn't gone away. So yeah, I think you're right. We probably should be celebrating Nexus a little bit, but it does feel like one of those hollow celebrations. Like, hey, yeah, you did it. Deck featuring a card we wish it wasn't featuring. I don't know. I'm so torn. I'm conflicted.
I know it's awful. And even if you want to take something a look at something a little bit more reasonable, there is MTG Top 8, which takes a look at mainly. Even this is still a little bit, because I know they do take a look at Magic Online. I forgot about that, but they have it here as 16% as a more conservative estimate.
That's more conservative, yeah. But I mean, it's probably still hovering in that 20% range, and that's a lot for a standard deck. And at the top tables, it's worrisome. So again, I'm not saying that like we'd be banning anything or anything like that, but it would not be pointing to a healthy format if you had a deck that was consistently between 20 and 40% representation. So for all we want to complain about Nexus, we should be celebrating a real deck entering the metagame and not just being a one-off. So
yeah.
Anything else that strikes your fancy from Brussels that looks interesting?
No, I don't think so. And I mean, like, to be honest, like, Standard's not really like where I'm at anyway. I guess like something that we want to talk about, I guess, could be the Red Green Monsters list.
Yeah, that's the list I pulled open to look at.
Because this is sort of an old style sort of deck that we haven't.
You should love this deck.
I mean, yeah,
it's got Vine Mares.
It does have a couple Vine Mares. It has Voltaic Brawler, which is a card that I just always wish would have actually been better in the actual format.
It's not like it's not seen any like no play in its
life in Standard. It was like here and there.
Yeah.
But. I mean, this deck is. I don't think it's anything remarkable, but it is sort of your Red Green Monsters sort of beat down list, and has like a few notable, probably important one-ofs in the main, like a one-of Banefire.
It's got another on the board too.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot of Twitter talk about Banefire. Like that being said, like Control has a resurgence this week. Banefire. There's a lot of decks in Standard right now that could just play a couple Banefires and really make it interesting.
I just think like sometimes you just have this really good fireball that can't be countered, and it's really good.
Do you know another card that got highlighted this weekend? Now, and I'm not sure. I need to look through some of these decks to see which ones actually have copies of it. But Frank Carson made mention that a number of decks. Oh yeah, like okay, so Red Black Train Whirler in 8th place, for example, I'm so sorry. It's Papadopoulos, which is a great last name. I will butcher your first name, and I'm so sorry. He's playing 2 copies of Insult to Injury in the sideboard.
the mostly red deck is playing that as well.
Yeah, and that's a card that the front half of it literally says that you sources you control deal double damage this turn, but it also says damage can't be prevented, which is a really good way to interact.
It's very important.
Fog. Now it is awkward because some of the Nexus decks have they've already shifted into some copies of Settle the Wreckage to sort of play back and forth with this. So if you go for Insult to Injury and then you get settled, that's upsetting. But Insult to Injury is a sweet card. I've played it already many times in Standard, and I'm very happy that it gets a little bit of play. Like that's a cool. Again, that's an effect Red should have to answer a Turbo Fog
Yeah.
style of play. So I think that's cool to see, again, a couple of these cards that maybe didn't get a ton of highlight before, but like, hey, Insult to Injury, you know what, you make that you make that last push across the finish line. I appreciate it. So yeah, I think the red green go back to that deck, the red green monsters deck though. I think it's something that hasn't really existed in this format because the control decks are so good, and even cards like Rekindling Phoenix, which is again one of the better red cards probably printed in modern Magic. Just because of the way the white control decks worked isn't that great. You between Settle the Wreckage and Cast Out and Teferi, like it doesn't really do its job very effectively the way it's supposed to against like black removal. So I could see a card getting better in mid range as a strategy, getting better after rotation, just because we're losing especially things like Cast Out, which between Cast Out and Settle the Wreckage, obviously they still get to keep Settle, but that and Commit, like your opponent always has something terrifying on turn 4.
It's important to know that Vraska's Contempt also still exists in the format,
sure,
which will be
it certainly does.
a bit of a downer.
Yeah, but I think like for most decks, even the Esper decks, like it's hard to stretch too hard all the time on that mana. But I think I don't know. It's just been the format has just been very unfriendly to those things, and exiling effects have been so important.
Yeah.
That these kind of decks are a little tougher. But I will say a card is pretty good against Cast Out and Commit and Vraska's Contempt is Vinemare.
It's true.
Yeah, Settle's still good against it, but Vinemare, I was skeptical. I thought it was going to be just like an annoying uncommon. It's carving out a little trail for itself.
Yeah, I think like if you give a card like
if you give a card a cookie.
If you give a card playability and hexproof, like it's probably going to get played.
If you give a card a cookie, it's going to want more cookies.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's going to tell its friends.
But that's what we have with Vinemare. It doesn't take much to push a card into playability when it has hexproof.
Right.
And it has a relevant ability as not being able to be blocked by black creatures. And that those two things combined, like, okay, people are gonna find a way, and
like life.
Yeah, exactly. So
no, I think it's like, and when you look at the the decks that the Vinemare is kind of attacking, you're talking about Scarab God, you're talking about Glint Sleeve Siphoners, you're talking about Hostage Takers, you're talking about like just these cards we've already seen in this top 32 we've looked at. We're talking about Nicol Bolas, the Ravager. Like these are all cards that just don't interact with Vinemare, and Vinemare hits for a lot. Like 5 is a ton.
It's a clock.
So, and you can do a lot of things to it. This deck's playing multiple copies of Ronus, for example.
Yeah. It's a pretty big deal.
A pretty big deal, yeah. So, it's pretty interesting to see that card already seeing as much play as it has between Steel Leaf Stompy did not put up a huge amount of results here in Brussels.
It did fare, I think, like a little bit better in Orlando, but not by very much.
And that's because honestly, that deck really can't do much against. You have to have negates essentially. The blue splash, you cannot do much against the Turbo Fog deck.
Yeah, if you're playing the green splash blacklist, you're not gonna fare well.
And I think that's probably the biggest indicator of Nexus's place in the metagame, to see the green just sort of disappear there, because it's rough. So yeah, you want to switch to Orlando?
Yeah. So moving over to Orlando, we have Blue White Approach winning the tournament, piloted by Gabriel Yoglar, I should say. I don't know why I added the extra U. It's because he played blue. That's why. Clearly.
That's why you added the extra U. Nice save.
Yeah. He defeated Mono Red Wizards, piloted by Kyle Cooper. So this is the Wizards Lightning red deck that we were playing. That's playing like a Viashio Pyromancer along with some other extra wizards and Flame of Keld. So this is the super duper low to the ground red deck, and we see that this list has also adopted the Insult to Injury game plan.
Yeah, and this was a deck that again, Frank Carson he was doing when we have a European GP, we essentially get that good coverage from him. He wrote about this being a deck that was popular there as well, though it didn't put up the finish, as a counter to the Nexus deck. The Nexus deck can prevent damage but doesn't really interact with burn, like at all.
Right.
So having just loading up on a bunch of lightning bolts is a really good way to finish them off. And that's still a fine strategy against the regular control decks as well. You just want to get underneath them and use Flame of Keld to reload. So yeah, not surprising to see this version. Now I've played this version. I really didn't like how consistent it was, but it does do its job well. If you just want to burn somebody out, you can do it.
Yeah. We also have, the rest of the type 8. We have Grixis Midrange, piloted by Adam Fox. We have Esper Control, piloted by Adriel Calderon. Red-Black Aggro, piloted by Greg Sokol. Green-Black Constructor, piloted by Ian Plants. Blue-Black Midrange, piloted by Corey Burkhart. And then Grixis Midrange again, piloted by Arseny Igorov? Sure. So a couple versions of Grixis, lists kind of showing up, and we, this deck is around, it exists, and it does show up in Magic Online, but I never feel like we talk about it a whole bunch. But this is the Nicol the Ravager deck, and I'm really surprised that this deck just isn't like taking over the format. I feel like it has so many powerful cards.
Shell was always so good. I mean, that's what I enjoyed playing before.
Yeah, and like the combination of like Nicol Bolas with like Liliana's Death Majesty is really gross. And I just it kind of blows my mind that this isn't just the most played deck within the format. And I don't know, maybe it just can't it has a Achilles heel to a deck within the format that always keeps it in check. But there's so many powerful things going on in these kind of lists with Torrential Gearhulk, Nicol Bolas, even like Champion of Wits and like Little Sleeve Siphoner. Like those are cards that definitely die to Chain Whirler, but if they go unchecked against some of these control lists, then they could just get out of hand.
Yeah, I felt that way about the black-white like deck too. I feel like that some of these decks, even though they have this many powerful effects, they just don't. Like, they have draws that are very good, and then like their average draws just get beat out by too many decks, especially the red-black decks that are just so consistent. I think that's really the problem, is that the red-black decks have answers, literally main deck answers for all of their cards except for maybe the Scarab God.
Yeah.
And all their threats are robust as well. And I think like that's tough. And for example, as good as Nicol Bolas the Ravager is, like the card has shown itself to be very good. Those decks do kind of feast on each other a little bit, because like Fatal Push is awkwardly very good against your 4-mana mythic. So I think that it's a little awkward, because like if this deck does get too much of a metagame share, then they start to beat on each other. Like it gets real tough. And those mirror matches before you had Nicol Bolas were always a slog. So
yeah.
I'm kind of surprised. I guess I'm not surprised because it's Corey Burkhart, but I'm surprised to see blue black mid range, like straight up throwback blue black mid range, like in the top 8 here.
Yeah, that's just like a another pretty classical list.
And he's full on 4 Glincy Siphoner and 4 Champion of the Wits in the main. Like, does not give any blanks about a Goblin Chain Whirler. So
yeah,
now granted, like he's obviously shown himself to play very well, not just with this deck, but in general.
Yeah,
but I think this is an impressive deck to take to a top 8 with the way that like even this top 32 looks.
Mm-hmm.
So
I would agree with that. We have the other throwback list here in the top 8 with Green Black Constrictor, and I mean like this list to me feels very, very old. We do see some blips of new cards with Thorn Lieutenant and Vivian Reed showing up in the main deck, but a lot of the stuff it just feels like it's pretty stock.
This is another deck that also just doesn't fare well against generally the control decks for one, and 2 the Nexus deck. Like this deck does not interact from a position that I want to really do that with. But of course, everything here is very powerful, and it should be pointed out like Ballista still runs this format in a lot of ways. So I think that any deck that can work well with Walking Ballista at least has a shot at doing something. But yeah, this is another throwback list, and I think if I go back and look, is this the only one in the top 32 here? Were there any in Brussels?
I didn't see any in Brussels, to be honest. I didn't really look that hard, but I don't think I saw any.
I think this is the only one in both tournaments.
Yeah. Which, I mean, that says something.
I mean, it does. It really does.
I really feel like with green black, you have to work so hard to get your wins, and I feel like the person
Yeah, it's like bad Jund.
like the person that's playing this is probably just like that's just the deck they've been on forever, and like this is their
And again, good on them. They can top 8 at
Yeah,
a
of
GP
course.
with it. Like, not taking anything away.
But like I know when I played that deck for a little bit, it felt like you had to try so hard to like get your advantage, and
And honestly, a lot of your cards, the draws without like a Winding Constrictor or with a Winding Constrictor but nothing to do with it. Like you have cards like Winding Constrictor, even Thorn Lieutenant, Land of War Elves, and then Rishkar, which are like good, but like I don't know, not really exciting when you don't put them together the right way.
Yeah.
When that deck does like curve the right way, it's very explosive. But otherwise, you are playing like compared to like Steel Leaf Stompy, even you're playing like bad creatures.
yeah, but I mean like when we take a look at the top 30 here, we have I think actually just one copy of Steel Leaf.
And again, the story is the same for them. These green decks can't interact with the Nexus deck. They already had a pretty average control matchup, so when you combine the two in the metagame, you probably don't want to play them.
Yeah,
Which is sad because I know that like Steel Leaf Stompy is a deck that appeals to a lot of players, and like casting Galta is great, and I know that this deck is a deck that appeals to a lot of players. Bad Jund always appeals to players, so I wouldn't play it going forward, but good job on the top 8.
Yep, and a lot of the lists that we see here definitely are red black. That's going to be the real story of this tournament. We do have Turbo Fog here.
Both tournaments. There are another 4 copies of Turbo Fog in the top 32 here. So again, it's carved out its piece of the metagame, but yeah, you're not wrong. Chain Whirler decks are still the decks.
Yeah. The only other sort of notable things we have showing up are really in 26th and 27th place with Mono Blue Artifact Storm. So this is the Aetherflux Reservoir deck. And we see a little bit of a red splash. I don't know if they've always had this, but for Joyra, excuse me, Weatherlight Captain. But this is the big old cannon deck. Gonna shoot you with my laser. But we saw this at the Pro Tour. We saw people really trying to push this archetype and seeing if it could be successful. So it hasn't been. Again, it's not one of those things that's taken over the format, but it is another deck that I feel is overshadowed. I feel like this deck is overshadowed by Turbo Fog and like the controversy surrounding it, because this is another new archetype pretty much. I mean, we've had things like this try to be developed and try to be put into place, but this is like the most success like this sort of archetype has had within Standard, and it's just like I feel like people don't care as much.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Now, granted, you say another new archetype again, not
wholly new,
revitalized, but not new. And then also, again, there's one copy in both tournaments. Like there's one out of both. Like it does not have much of a showing. And I think this deck is great as far as like what it's doing. And I'm going to be kind of sad, honestly, when it's gone, because with Kaladesh needs to rotate. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah,
but
it needs to go.
But when Kaladesh rotates, I don't think that Ravnica is gonna screams combo to me. Like we lose. Something that Standard doesn't always have, which are true combo decks, and we're losing. I know I made this joke before, but combo decks really always sounds like Tombo decks. But anyways, the combo decks leave a light on for you.
They do.
But they, I think like a bunch of what we're seeing play right now. So like the New Horizons and other things like this. Not New Horizons.
New Perspectives.
New Perspectives. It plays New Horizons, which is the land card. But yeah, so I think like it's sad to see these decks go, and I think like if Jory is going to see play, for example, this is the deck, and I think like this take on this deck is sweet, and I'm glad the deck exists, but it's just unfortunate that it really found its like second wind so late.
Yeah, I agree.
So, and of course, it did that because of the core set. Don't get me wrong, but like it's kind of like oh shucks.
Yeah.
So
I definitely agree, and if who knows, maybe if like some of these pieces that existed earlier, this deck might have been more of a problem,
and that's possible too. Maybe like we're saying good things about it now, but had it been this good before, it would have taken over. But I think like the control decks have been robust enough, and like really give we've harped on we made some jokes about like design testing, but I will say cards like Disallow, for example, like WotC really found a sweet spot with like what a cancel effect cannon should do.
Yeah,
and like these decks, we saw combo pieces, not just like Aetherflux Reservoir, but like the Paradox Engine and just things that we thought, oh god, this is so close to broken. Like, Paradox Engine in other formats, specifically Casual and Commander, is already like a crazy staple. And I played against it in Brawl too. It does broken things, but Standards had powerful enough control options to keep it under wraps, so the deck can be good but not great. And I think that's just kind of where these kind of decks have to sit in Standard, because you don't have in Modern they can be Corkland Ironworks because you can play Thoughtseize. You know what I mean? Like Thoughtseize broke Standard the last time it was here, so we have to be pretty careful with that.
Yeah, I agree. The only other interesting list we have is Blue-Eyed Drakehaven showing up again.
Yeah, I definitely already opened that one. I was there. I was already there. I was flying on the wings of my Drakes.
Yeah, nothing new.
Hey, shut up.
Really,
let them have their swan song.
I'm
and
just
that's because they're
saying,
2/2 flyers.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
literally a swan song.
But I mean, like, hey, it's people are still trying, and hats off to them.
Is there anything at all new here? Let me take a look. I mean, obviously,
not brand new. I wouldn't expect there to be anything to be
no. I will
brand
say
new.
Teferi is a good get for this deck, and we've seen it show up a couple times, and that's pretty great.
Yeah.
I do think that Drakehaven still sits in an awkward situation just because there's so many decks that have main deck ways to interact with it, between the Exile effects and Thrashing Brontodon being a staple, and like Vivian Reed seeing play. Like, it is just so tough to base your game plan on making these little Drakes, but it's worth it. It's worth it. They're so cute, and they spit hot fire in Canada, so it's worth playing them. If this is the last time we get to see Drakehaven, then I appreciate all the work that you did, Corey Lurch. You are my personal hero, and Drakehaven, we hardly knew you.
Yeah, goodbye. We'll watch you fly off into the sunset.
When I do make my Oscars in memoriam segment for when we rotate, that will be the card that gets the longest.
I know. We'll have to play the music off so you stop talking about it.
Just keep talking about Drakehaven. Da 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 da. Like, somebody put the PowerPoint up. Like, Drakehaven got that really, really slow transition where it's like, okay, this dissolve shouldn't have taken this long. All the other dissolves happened. Okay, come on.
Oh man! All right, well that's it for competitive. What's happening this weekend? So we have 2 more GPs, which are again both standard and both in the US. So we have one in LA and one in Providence. So
from coast to coast,
yeah, East Coast, West Coast. Gonna have some standard action going on, and then we actually have a Star Games tournament. So we have a team constructed tournament in Dallas Fort Worth,
it's right in the middle.
Yeah,
I really appreciate that. They looked at the GP schedule and they were like, "Where can we put this pin on the map?" Right there, you go.
Right here we go. Found it. So definitely a lot of Magic going on over the weekend. So hopefully you're heading out to a tournament of some persuasion, or if you're a local, heading out to Comic Town to play in the IQ. But that's going to be everything for us this weekend. So if you're listening to us on your Apple device, or you can always leave us a review or rating on Apple Podcasts. If you're listening to us via MTGcast, feel free to listen to some of the other shows they have on there. If you want to contact us, we do have a few ways you can go about that. You can add us on Twitter, and it's just your end step. When you add us, it's at your end step. We do have an email address at yourendstep@gmail.com, and we have Facebook. You can do a quick search for at your end step, and we pop right up. While you're there, be sure to check out our sponsor, Comic Town. You can find them at Comic Town Gaming Center when you are on Facebook. Also, we again, I know I mentioned this at the top of the show, but we have a Patreon where you can, if you feel like contributing to the show, you most certainly can. It's patreon.com/@yourendstep. We have various tiers that you can contribute at, and we do have that contest going on for all of our Patreon subscribers. So if you do join the Patreon before the end of this month, you'll be entered into that contest to win a Nexus of Fate. And of course, if you don't necessarily want to join the Patreon, that's more than fine. We do have another contest going on our Twitter. It's our pinned tweet. It should be our pinned tweet for you to go to that Google form and fill out your information and get entered into the other Nexus of Fate that we are giving away. So again, check those out.
One last blurb for myself. I wrote an article for Legit MTG that went live as of recording this show about the Transformers TCG. So if you were interested in that, the editor at Legit certainly was, which worked out well for me. He was like, "Oh yeah, give me this." If you want to see some pictures of what the cards are, I posted some pictures of what they are, and hear some more thoughts on that. Go ahead and take a read.
Yeah. But like I said, that'll be everything for us this week. We'll catch you next time. You have a great one. Bye.